Broadcasting live from atop the Rocky Mountains, the crossroads of the West. You are listening to the Liberty RoundTable Radio Talk Show.
Happy to have you along, my fellow Americans. Sam Bushman live on your radio and TV. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. As you know, the goal is to promote God, family, and country, and to protect life, liberty, and property. This is the broadcast for September the 9th in the year of our Lord, 2025. We got an incredible surprise guest coming up. Sheriff Mack, founder and president of the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, CSPOA.org. Sheriff Mack beat Bill Clinton to the Supreme Court. Many of you know that. That's great news. It's one of the greatest 10th Amendment decisions ever rendered in America today. And a lot of people try to downplay it and act like it's very narrow in scope and only relates to sheriffs, and it's just not very relevant because it relates to gun rights, and it's a lie. It's a very broad case, a very appropriate case, highlighting the dual sovereignty between the general government and the states, and who works for whom, if you will. Well, anyway, during the Supreme Court case time, G. Gordon Liddy, believe it or not, God rest his soul, great talk show host. I used to listen to him all the time. Anyway, you had a chance to go visit G. Gordon Liddy and be on the air with him in person, right?
2 hours after I got out of the Supreme Court. Now, he had already made arrangements with me, Sam, but I literally forgot that I was supposed to be on a show. I was so excited about the press conference being held in front of the United States Supreme Court building on the steps right outside, out front. Sheriff Frank was there, Sheriff Prince was there, and I think a couple other sheriffs, but I think Sheriff Romero didn't wait around, and I don't think Sheriff McGee made it. I don't think he was feeling well. Sheriff Coog, I'm not sure when he passed away, but it was close to that time. So I don't really remember, but he may have been there. I can't remember. I thought 6 out of the 7 were there, but maybe it was a little bit less because of all the pictures, I only see Sheriff Frank from Vermont, Sheriff Prince from Montana, and then myself. And then right after the press conference, and I think I sent you a couple of, well, the picture of just Sheriff Frank and Sheriff Prince and me was right outside the U.S. Supreme Court. Then the picture with my lawyer, Dave Hardy, and the NRA lawyer, Stephen Halbrook, were right outside, and I think the press conference had just ended. And then they all said they wanted to go eat, and I was certainly hungry, and my 2 kids that were with me, Luci and Rich, were really hungry. And so we did, and it was a German restaurant just down, not too far from the Supreme Court, and everything just, in all the excitement, I forgot about G. Gordon Liddy. And I think one of his staff didn't text me. Sorry, I didn't have a cell phone. What was the buzzer? What was the buzzer?
Pager?
What was it called? The pager. Yeah, they paged me. Gosh, I swear, technology. They paged me, and I said, "Oh no!" And so they sent a car for me, and so Luci and Rich and I got in the chauffeur. It wasn't a limousine, but it was a chauffeured vehicle, and rushed us right over to, I can't remember where his studio was located. It wasn't Arlington, but it was a familiar name. And we got in there, and there was about 20 minutes, 15 minutes left on his show before he ended. So he rushed us right in there, and Luci and Rich were waiting in the lobby, and the way the windows were, that was all windows in his studio. So we could see Rich and Luci and people coming in and out and whatnot, which there wasn't very many of that. So Luci and Rich were listening to the show, and then you have that. Now I have in my hand the original cassette tape and I'm showing it right now. And it says on it.
By the way, his radio studio was in Fairfax, Virginia, Sheriff.
Fairfax, that's it. Thank you. And this says 106.7 FM WJFK, Gordon Liddy show, December 3rd, 1996. So almost 29 years ago. And so this is just first of all, the last time I remembered using this cassette tape was when I was teaching school at Heritage Academy. And I kept it in the cassette player, the portable cassette player that I had. And it was kind of small, but it was about 10 inches long and 5 inches wide. And so I just kept it in that because I knew I wouldn't lose that. Well, since then, we've moved 2 or 3 times, and
And you
things have been
lost it.
packed away. Yeah, yeah, and anyway, Dawn has been going through photos lately, and she found it. And this is a family heirloom, but Sam, this is very historic, not just for our family, but for the United States of America. The man who committed the burglary at Watergate wanted to interview me at that time. Now, I'd been on a show lots of times, but this was the first interview I was to have, except for the press conference outside the Supreme Court. This was the first the real radio show, second largest in the United States, second only to Rush Limbaugh. And I'm in his studio, and we're talking about the most important Supreme Court case regarding the 10th Amendment and federalism in the history of our country, with the man who committed the burglary at Watergate Hotel for John Dean. And he wasn't very kind to John Dean in his book. In fact, he really said that John Dean was the mastermind behind all of it, that he lied. And G. Gordon Liddy did not lie. He would not lie, and he would not say everything he knew. So because he would not talk, he got 6 years in prison. He didn't take their deal. And so G. Gordon Liddy just told him to shove it. I'm not helping you. You want me to go to prison? Fine. And they ended up transferring him about 5 or 6 times because he kept kind of running things behind the scenes in those prisons, and he got prison guards and everybody else so confused about what was going on. They just kept moving him because he caused so much trouble because he was so smart, and he was much smarter than they were. G. Gordon Liddy has an IQ, or had an IQ of about 190, and these people could not keep up with him. It was like he was running those prisons from his cell. And
He was a great
yeah,
talk show host. He was great in
yes,
life. The fact that he wouldn't lie is incredible. The details of what he knew, hard to analyze because we don't know. But the fact is, he was brilliant. He was articulate, and he knew where to go for real news. And that's why you were on the show. The other tidbit about this that's important is we translated this tape to an MP3 file. So we're going to play this. And we'll just start. You can. It's kind of audio, so we don't have video for it, but we'll put up some pictures and things like that the best we can for video. I want to skip
okay.
the break, so everybody pay attention. Skip the break, and then we'll basically start this. And you can just say pause, Sheriff, and we'll pause, and you can talk about any piece you want to. Here we go.
Before we get into that, let me just give a little bit of foundation here. We were not allowed to bring anybody. Dawn, my wife, wanted to go to the event with me, and she was hoping to go inside. And my lawyers were working on getting us inside. And then
To
Dawn
what
said,
event?
"No, I'd rather the kids go." And so I took Luci and Rich. Luci was a junior in high school, and Rich had just started his first year of college, I believe, at Eastern Arizona, where I graduated. And so they said nobody can get in. No, wife can't go. Kids can't go. You want to bring them? They can wait outside or in the lobby or whatever. And
To
then
go where? To the
the
radio
morning that
station
we
or
were
to
getting
the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court, but
Okay.
but miraculously, the Secret Service called my lawyer, Dave Hardy, the morning we're getting ready to go over to the Supreme Court, and they said max 2 kids can come in now because they have every seat assigned, and they know every person in every seat just for security. And the miracle happened. Our prayers were answered, and Luci and Rich got to go with me to the United States Supreme Court inside and sat in on the whole hearing. Now, go ahead with the interview with G.
All
Gordon.
right, we got to skip the break. I don't know how that happened, but we got to skip that. Okay. Yeah, now go ahead, Zach. We're going to start with this interview here. And again, it's just audio, but it's G. Gordon Liddy back in the day in 96. Here we go.
Okay, we have now with us Sheriff Mack. And Sheriff, I know you're from down there south of Tucson, but I forget your county. Wait a minute, I'll look at your badge. Graham County. Graham County.
Right.
Sheriff of Graham County.
Yes, sir.
Arizona. I just came back Sunday night from Arizona. Just glorious weather there.
Well, you should have stopped by. We could have gone for good Mexican food.
Oh, boy, I love Mexican food. Just love Mexican food. Now, tell me, you attended the argument
Yes.
of your case at the Supreme Court of the United States today.
Just got out 2 hours ago.
Could you get us any kind of a sense of what the justices were interested in from the questions they were asking the lawyers?
Yes. The whole experience, Gordon, I have to tell you, was just awesome. I mean, I was just enthralled with the entire process. First of all, how many times does a small-town sheriff take the federal government all the way to the Supreme Court?
That's right.
This
And the
doesn't
Supreme Court,
happen.
the mere fact that the Supreme Court accepted the case means that they viewed it as an important question of law.
Right. And I really, to be quite honest, I felt a spirit of tremendous concern from all the justices. The questions were very appropriate. They were to the point. They struck at the core of constitutional freedom. Mm-hmm. And I really felt a strong concern. And, you know, you hear it all the time, especially on these conservative talk shows nationwide, that the Supreme Court doesn't care about the Constitution or they don't care about American fundamentalism. I didn't feel that at all. I felt that these justices are very concerned about the Constitution. Their questions to our attorney were very appropriate, to the point, very constitutionally sound.
Can you remember any particular questions that they asked?
All of it, yeah, on both sides.
Okay,
most of their questions.
Stop it right there, Sam.
Question.
Yeah, pause that for a minute. I have to say that when the votes came out, I changed my mind entirely. Because as you recall, Sam, it was a 5-4 split. There were 5 Republicans on the Supreme Court, and they sided with me. The 4 Democrats sided with the Clinton administration. I was extremely disappointed in that. That it just became a political issue instead of a constitutional issue.
Well, and the real issue is not only was it a political issue, but it became a partisan issue. I mean, the founders warned us that parties would destroy the country, and this was as partisan as it gets.
And then when I read the decision and I saw Stevens' dissenting opinion, it was the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life. And he said, if Congress believes, in fact, that's all they had to do is, if Congress believes that such a legislation will benefit the nation, then we need to respect their opinion on that. That's literally what he said.
Yeah, and in my opinion, he should have been impeached from the Supreme Court over that, though. How dare he make a claim like that? There's checks and balances, and there's limits to what Congress can legislate. There's limits to what the president can do, and there's even limits to what the courts can do. Go read your Constitution, people.
And so we were asking them to just decide, can the federal government commandeer the sheriffs of this country and force them with a threat of arrest to do their bidding and follow their orders? And that's the problem with so many sheriffs and law enforcement today. They just follow orders. And I was not going to do that for them. I was not going to be their little boy and go run their errands for them. And I worked for the people of Graham County. And he just said that. And by the way, he was wrong. Tucson, Safford, and Graham County are not south. They're northeast. And so anyway, he didn't have this geography right. But go ahead and play the next thing, because the next line from Scalia that I talk about is very good.
So their questions centered on and focused on the very heart of our case, which is, you know, based on federalism. Does the federal government have the authority to be this big intervening monster and just do whatever they feel like they can do anytime they want to do it? And so their questions centered on that particular principle. They asked,
how about the question of whether they mandated that you expend your time and your energy and the resources of your department to help enforce this federal statute.
Right.
And but there was no appropriation of any funds for you to do that. In other words, the
That's
taxpayers of Graham County are supposed to foot the bill for the federal
Right.
government here.
And that was made clear in the case, that this was indeed an unfunded mandate. Now, the justices were solid on that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then they asked both attorneys on both sides, and I believe it was the Assistant Solicitor General, Dullinger, who represented the federal government on this issue. And it said, does the federal government have the authority to do this? And Scalia spoke up. What a great man.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, well,
Tremendous
if the Congress can do this, then they can balance the budget tomorrow. All they have to do is tell the states to do it, just like they're telling Sheriff Mack to do this.
Yeah. But by the way, it's Sheriff Richard Mack of Graham County, Arizona.
Correct.
I've just gotten a sign that tells you who you are. See, that you didn't know who you were before John gave you this sign.
No, we appreciate John's efforts.
Right. He's wearing a thing on one side that says Richard Mack, and the other says Sheriff Graham County.
Sam.
John writes it down so we'll know.
And quite miraculously.
Yeah, and that's a very key point, what Scalia said, because it was so powerful. If the federal government can order the states around and their employees or officers of the state or counties, and they can order them and commandeer them, and he was really funny when he presented that. There's a lot of people that laughed when he said, "Hey, we can balance the budget tomorrow. Tell the states to do it." You know, they can take all the heat, we take all the praise, and we can ignore all these problems that we caused in the first place. And Scalia was really funny throughout a lot of it. And then, as you know, he was the one that wrote the decision. And man, was this a powerful, broad decision. And then
And let's be clear, he further doubled down and explained, though, that yes, funding is a key element here, but with or without funding, they don't have authority to order states or local municipality. Because it's a dual sovereignty principle, and that was a big highlighted focus, Sheriff.
Because the money had nothing to do with it, as far as I was concerned. But the problem is there was no negotiation. There was no money offered. I already had a contract with the Federal Bureau of Prisons where they paid us to take inmates. And now all of a sudden they come in and say, well, we can tell you what to do anyway. So why do I need to have a contract with the Federal Bureau of Prisons? Why don't they just order me to take their inmates? So, yeah. So there was a lot of problems with that. But as the show went on, in just a couple of minutes more, some new broadcast journalists took over the show.
All right, here we go.
Miraculously, I have Lucy and Rich here with me. They got to go to the court case with me, my son and daughter.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah.
Good to see you. Well, let me tell you. John, you move out of the way.
Lucy?
We lost Lucy. Oh, well,
She's hiding.
Lucy's hiding. Well, you've got a dad to be proud of.
Yeah,
Boy,
in
I'll
fact,
tell you.
Lucy has to ask you some questions for her high school class.
Okay.
So,
All right. Does she want to ask me now? That's all right.
Sure.
Come on over, Lucy.
Come on over. All right. But she's been studying some key questions from her class, and she wanted to ask you personally two particular Watergate. Is that all right?
Okay, that's fine. Sure, absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to ask you whose idea was Watergate and who brought it on, and
John Dean. John Dean recruited me for Watergate.
you recruited me?
And he recruited me in the office of Bud Crow in the White House for Watergate. And actually, it was what he specifically recruited me for was for an all-out offensive as well as defensive, intelligence operation, covert, the whole thing. And then when John Dean testified, he lied under oath repeatedly. He's a serial perjurer. There's a big lawsuit going on about it right now. And when he wrote a book that your teacher may recall called Blind Ambition. That's John Dean's book. And in it he says how carefully he prepared and how he did all of this and everything. He said he prepared for that book just as carefully as he did for his testimony. Well, when he was deposed under oath recently, he admitted he didn't even write the book. He didn't even read it all. And, and because we caught him in all these lies.
Okay, and why did you do it even though you knew it was wrong?
For the same reason, I didn't know it was wrong. It was illegal. That you can have a distinction between something that is morally wrong and something that is illegal. For example, it is illegal to go through a stop sign. And that is because the laws of the state of Arizona, let us say that you must not go through a stop sign. Other than that, if there weren't any law that said that, it would be morally and legally indifferent. Now, even if there were no law and there were no sign, if you came rushing at an intersection and you didn't look both ways, then you would be acting recklessly, and then you'd be recklessly endangering somebody's lives, and that would be wrong even without a law.
Yeah.
You see?
Okay, and how much was Nixon?
Lucy and I both thought he gave some mumbo jumbo there instead of just really answering that a little bit more specifically for her high school class. But go ahead and then play the last question.
Well, and let me respond there for a second, too. Sometimes when you get inside government, you lose focus on a little bit right and wrong, and you justify things that you do sometimes. G. Gordon Liddy was a great man. He was brilliant. He was honorable, but he did make some mistakes. And in my opinion, this is one of them. Where it's like,
he committed a
hey,
burglary and he knew it.
you can't do that kind of stuff. So he justified himself, because that's just what happens when you get around the rich and famous and popular and powerful, and you tend to make mistakes and kind of lose your head. And I think that's what happened to him, just like everybody else that are involved in these crimes.
Right.
Really
Right, go ahead.
involved
He wasn't involved at all.
at all?
No, matter of fact, on the 19th, the morning of the 19th, I told John Dean exactly what had happened and everything, because, John Dean had recruited me for this, and he had asked to see me about it. And I had every expectation, he was the counsel of the president, that he would go tell his client, the president, here's exactly what happened, and now you know the worst, and you can take whatever action is appropriate. Dean withheld a whole lot of critical information from the president, most especially anything that would indicate to the president that John Dean had anything to do with it.
So when Nixon said that he didn't know anything about it, he really didn't know anything about it?
Not beforehand. Not beforehand.
Not before. No. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, those were good questions.
So, Sam, we have Lucy, my daughter, on the show right now with us.
She's just not a teenager. Welcome, Lucy.
She still looks like it, though. You can tell.
Now she's a wonderful mother. Welcome, Lucy.
We can't hear you, Lucy.
All right, we'll see if we can get her unmuted, and there's a choice to mute your camera there and mute your microphone, Lucy. Hopefully you can get that squared away. In the meantime, though, this G. Gordon Liddy interview was brilliant for a bunch of reasons. One, it was a couple of hours right after the Supreme Court case. It was live and real, raw, flat, new news at the time. Sheriff Mack didn't even really have all the details from the Supreme Court at the time. And G. Gordon Liddy drilled into this thing. You brought your children. They got to ask him several questions. What an incredible thing on a national talk show, though, for a girl like Lucy, a teenager, to be able to represent her class and go ask questions about this real, live, critical Supreme Court case issue that her dad was up. What a treat for the class, Sheriff.
Yeah, it was. And she has a very interesting perspective of the case. And she learned a lot there. And she was enthralled with it. Rich was enthralled with it. I was enthralled with it. And it was very historic. So, Lucy, you heard some of your interview. What are your thoughts right now, remembering that interview with G. Gordon Liddy?
Well, so when I did the interview, I was just sitting on the floor in the studio, listening to your interview. And then all of a sudden he's like, bring her on right now. I was like, I got super scared. I was not expecting that at all. I just thought I was going to.
I wasn't either.
After,
Yeah.
And so,
Well,
yeah. It was
you
exciting.
seemed pretty nervous. When you started and whatnot, but then you seem to calm down and really get into the
poised. She did a good job, though. And that's, by the way, what talk show hosts do best, is just say, you know what, I'm going to seize the moment. And Gordon did a perfect job.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was super fun going back to my class and telling them that I actually got to talk to him in person on the radio. And even though I got an unexcused absence for school
wow, what a disgrace! What a disgrace, Lucy.
I know, and so I had to go talk to the principal. I said, I really don't care if you excuse her or not, because I am. And Lucy was a straight A student, and she was in student government, and she was part of the Palm Line, and she was very active in the school. And I wasn't going to worry about her catching up on the work. But the thing of it is, she was there representing her class, and her class helped her devise the questions for G. Gordon Liddy relative to his involvement with Watergate. And Lucy and I both shared that his one question about whether he knew it was right or wrong, we both felt that he was giving her a bunch of mumbo jumbo. Is that how you felt, Luce?
Yeah, I wish he would have given me a more direct answer into his thoughts and how he justified doing what he did, instead of, whatever he explained about a stop sign being right or wrong. Yeah, I wish he would have been a little more specific, especially listening back now.
I mentioned Lucy, that I think really the issue is when you get, in league with the rich and the famous and the powerful, and you kind of end up thinking you're above the law, and you're kind of mixed up between right and wrong, and you kind of think, our guy winning, or our guy this or that, or whatever the case may be. It's so important that they're there, that the ends justify the means, and
Right.
you kind of deceive yourself into this lie. I mean, that's really the case here, right?
I mean, I would have asked him a follow-up right then and there, and I didn't think of it either right then. But right now I would say, why didn't you tell John Dean to pound sand and tell him you're not going to commit a burglary for him or anybody else? But,
well, and the other way to say the question too is, so why didn't you stop at the stop sign then, sir?
Yes. Yeah. Would have been
Just
good.
kind of being,
That
there you go. But I want to ask you a couple of questions, Lucy, about this too. You're a teenager, you're on the radio nationwide, you're with this rock star guy kind of thing and everything else. It's obvious that you were a little bit nervous, but you were poised and did a great job. But let me ask you this. What did you think of him as a person? Did you feel like he was an honorable man? And did you feel like he was, usually women and young people have a pretty good sense of, when they're being punked, right? Did you feel like he was an honest person and a good guy?
Yeah, he made me feel super welcome and comfortable, and even meeting him after, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, kind of takes me by surprise, because he was, he did commit a crime. So you kind of, in your head, this guy's a criminal or whatever, but no, he was great. I didn't have a sense of anything other than like a lot of respect for him, despite the mistakes that he made.
Well, and he served his time. He did.
Well, and he was honorable too. He said, look, I'm not going to lie for anybody. I'm not going to play any games. I'm going to tell the truth. What I don't understand is, why didn't they prosecute John? If he lied, it would be pretty easy to catch him in those lies and double down. And that's the problem. We never see the right people go to jail, Sheriff.
Well, I believe John Dean did get in some trouble, and I know that several others that were part of it and working with John Dean actually served time in prison. I don't remember, maybe Zach can look that up, if John Dean actually did, but I thought he did. But I know that Mitchell, the Attorney General, he got in some trouble, and John Elrickman served time in the federal prison camp in Safford, Arizona. So it was, All the President's Men, that movie, it showed a lot of other people involved. It wasn't just John Dean, and it wasn't just G. Gordon Liddy. And the Attorney General probably was the one that was in charge of the cover-up. And he got in some real serious trouble, as well as John Elrickman, who was also an attorney for President Nixon.
So let me explain. He had time already served, which he had 4 months in a kind of a halfway house. So he was going to have 1 to 4 years in prison, never did. And the reason why is basically, here's what he did. He testified against other members and basically saved his own bacon by, hanging everybody else out to dry, which is what Gordon Liddy's point was. Right. And Gordon Liddy had the integrity to say, no, I'm not doing that to everybody else.
Right.
But so he didn't really serve any time for it, hardly. Kind of a 4 months and a halfway house is about it. G. Gordon Liddy got a way worse punishment than this guy. And that's what I mean is, all the wrong people go to jail.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's still people to this day that believe Nixon should have gone to jail. And the biggest
And I'm one of
historic,
them.
yeah, and the biggest historic problem with it all is that Gerald Ford was picked to be his vice president, and because of Agnew got in legal trouble, who was the vice president originally, and it just kept the all the president's men just kept falling and crumbling, and the eggshells were breaking and over and over. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall, is a part of all of this, and it just they just kept falling and falling, and finally they're going to impeach Nixon, and instead of being impeached, Nixon left, and Gerald Ford, the only president in U.S. history who never was elected, lost the next election because he pardoned Nixon right after this, and everybody smelled a rat, and it stunk to high heaven. And so it was like, if I make you vice president and then you become president, will you make sure that you pardon me? And it seemed like that was the deal Nixon had made before.
And Joe Biden virtually doing the same kind of stuff to protect all the people that he was with and everything. I mean, like I say, the right people never go to jail. You know, there's people above the law. There's people that are, and there you go. All right. How did Rich deal with all this, Lucy? Let's, from a teenager point of view, you and your brother are going to do this cool thing together, right?
Yeah. Well, honestly, that whole day was just incredible. Looking back on that, what an amazing experience. It was such a great trip too with Rich and my dad. I remember we ran through the National Mall, recreating the Forrest Gump scene. I don't know if you remember that, Dad.
Yes, I do.
Anyway, Rich and I actually sat on the front row of the Supreme Court.
Go ahead and skip the break if you can. Keep going, Lucy.
Yeah, so we were on the front row. I was basically sitting right in front of Clarence Thomas, who was kind of a hero. And
kind of, he's an American hero, big time, and still is.
Yes, well, I didn't. It's funny thinking about it now as an adult and what I know now versus what I knew then, right? And so, yes.
Oh yeah.
But I remember Ruth Bader Ginsburg was questioning the lawyers, and she just would not stop talking. And Clarence Thomas actually had leaned forward to talk in his microphone. And I was like, yes, I was excited because I thought he was going to say something. And I know he doesn't say much, but then she just kept talking. And then he leaned back in his chair and never came forward again. And so I remember getting my hopes up there. And then actually another thing that I want to point out, speaking of good men and respecting, something that I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, Dad, but one thing, so when we went into the courtroom, James Brady was there with Sarah Brady. And I remember my dad being kind of surprised, as I'm thinking about this now, being kind of surprised. My dad went and shook his hand. James Brady was in a wheelchair. So I don't know. Did he shake it? I can't remember if he shook his hand or just put your hand on his shoulder and just said, I appreciate your sacrifice. I appreciate what you've done for our country. Yep. And that took me back a little bit because here was Sarah Brady, who my dad had debated on Phil Donahue's show, which I was with him for that as well. But just seeing my dad show respect to this man who we had a lot of disagreements politically with, but at the same time showing him respect and giving him the credit that he deserved for taking that bullet for a president was just
amen to that. Amen to that. And let me throw out, this is again where the enemies of liberty, the enemies of anything conservative or moral or, the constitutional sheriff movement and everything else, this is where they fail to connect the dots. We may disagree with someone politically, but we always want to have civility at the forefront of who we are, what we do. We're not perfect at it. We're humans too. We get frustrated. But that is our goal, our desire. And it's really important to realize we can agree to disagree agreeably. And that was a perfect example of that. I sure wish we had a great video of that where we could just, whenever our enemies criticize us, we just play that baby and just show the truth right on the screen. I wish we had that, Lucy.
Yes, yes. And honestly, even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I disagree with her on a lot of things politically, but she was a pioneer for women. And so even the fact that I got to hear her argue at the Supreme Court, even though I was annoyed that she wouldn't stop talking, what is just really, as I've gotten older, just what a historic thing for me to experience, and on so many different levels. And I will say, actually, their attorney went first, the government's attorney went first, and no, our attorney went first, and I was like, we lost, we're losing. This is it, like, this is not good. And
my dad has wasted all his time.
Yes. I was like, this is not ending well. And then the government's attorney got up there, and I thought, we won. We're going to win. They hammered that attorney way worse than ours. And I thought ours was bad. So anyway, it was just such an incredible day. And I'm so thankful to my mom for sacrificing her seat, which I didn't realize until recently, and my dad for realizing how important it was for us to be there with him for that historic occasion.
Tell me how that affected you with the legacy of freedom continuing from generation to generation, because in my opinion, that's an indelible thing that you'll never forget.
Yeah, I think a lot of people talk about standing up for freedom and sometimes don't do much about it. But I watched my dad actually do something about it, and also dedicate his life to that. And so it is a personal thing. I mean, because of that, he ended up losing the sheriff's race. I had to move my senior year. It was a family sacrifice for sure. And I'm thankful that he did it, though. I wouldn't have changed a thing about that, standing up for what he believed was right. And he could not have fathomed the fallout from that, and what came as a result of that stance. I mean, I don't think, Dad, did you imagine sitting in front of the Supreme Court when you first decided to take that stance? Like,
no, everyone knows. Sam knows. Lucy. I never dreamed that it would be accepted by the Supreme Court, granted certiorari by the Supreme Court, and that we would win. All of that was just unimaginable. I'm getting a little teary-eyed right now, just remembering all of that and everything it cost us, and but being with you, and it, like, just so everybody knows, Lucy did not get to go on all the trips with me. All the kids took turns, and one time Jimmy was only like 6 years old, and I took him to Idaho with me, and he fell asleep on the gymnasium floor while I was giving my talk at the local high school. So all of my kids have been to Washington one-on-one with me. All of them been to New York one-on-one with me, San Francisco, and other places across the country. And then sometimes we went as an entire family to some of it. So it like the NRA convention in Phoenix, we all went, my mom and dad, my children. And to be able to look back at the last 29 years, 30 years, when you first started, it was 94. So that was 31 years ago. And all that we've been through, losing my job, losing my career. I never worked a day in law enforcement since that time. Being attacked by the FBI and the IRS when I ran for Utah County Sheriff, and looking back at all of it now, and how we were blessed, and how the Lord brought us back and helped us create the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association, and how we've been to all 50 states, where I have. And so Lucy got to go with me also when we did the Phil Donahue show. And that was, gosh, that was
my freshman year, like the
that
end
was your
of eighth
freshman
grade.
year, because that
End
was
of
right
eighth
at the very beginning. That was right
Let
after
me
we
ask Lucy
filed.
this question. Let me ask Lucy this question, because I think it's really important. You know, nowadays you would say, hey, my dad won at the Supreme Court. The issue was over autonomy for the states, for counties, for local officials not being commandeered by the state, or I'm sorry, by the general government. And so now you have a broader understanding that it was a incredible 10th Amendment decision that went way beyond sheriffs, way beyond guns, way beyond. It was a principled discussion about who has authority to control whom, and the separation of powers in America, and that the president isn't a king or a god. He has limits too. And Sheriff Mack proved it at the Supreme Court. But here's the question. Now you as an adult understand all that I just kind of articulated. As a kid, though, what did you think it was all about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I think it's just, to me at that time, it was just my dad felt that this was wrong and we stand up for what we believe in. And I think that's really what it boiled down to, was
You didn't
just.
want your
that's
dad
all
to
it
punch
takes
Bill
to-
Clinton in the nose?
Yeah, I probably didn't care much about politics then, but it was always in our family with my grandparents, and I knew the Constitution was important. You get these things that your parents teach you, but I think really what it came down to was just, this is what is right. And
when did I first teach you the preamble to sign language?
oh man,
How old were you then?
I feel like I was pretty young. That probably
He tried to
elementary
teach me
school.
that, and it didn't go very well.
No.
Yeah, elementary, I think. And then he's taught that to my kids and has taught that to my kids' classes. And actually, it was funny. When I first met my husband, I was telling him about my dad, and we were at a college on missions for our church. And I told him about my dad, and he didn't believe me. He was like, no way, whatever. And so somebody had a history textbook, and it had a bunch of Supreme Court cases, and we looked it up, and Mack versus the US was in the textbook. And my husband, well, he wasn't my husband at the time, but he couldn't believe it. It was so funny. Anyway, that's just kind of a fun random memory.
Sheriff,
I forgot that.
You get the last words.
Well, Sam, I had to fight back tears this whole time. Being able to share all of this with Lucy and my other children, and my wife, of course, was part of this. And the decision to actually sue the federal government was made by my wife, Dawn. And marrying her was also part of all of this, because just as Lucy alluded to, her parents, Lucy's grandparents, were very staunch constitutionalists, and they trained me and taught me, especially Grandpa Beals and Uncle Mitchell. They taught me a lot about the Constitution and the proper role of government. And so this really takes me back, way back, 50 years of marriage with my wife, just this very year, and how we've done this battle together, and we still do it together. And so, Sam, thanks for this show today. It was extremely powerful, emotional, uplifting for me, and hopefully Lucy, thanks so much for being on with us today. I know you had to get
Hold
up
on, you got a
early.
parting shot, Lucy? If you wrap it all up, what would your parting shot be to America about this whole experience?
My parting shot. Just, America is worth fighting for, and I'm so beyond thankful for those that have come before and laid the foundation. You read about the founding fathers and the miracle that America is. It's worth fighting for, to return us to those principles that America was founded on.
Ladies and gentlemen, they say the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. And when you watch Don Mack, the sheriff kind of didn't have quite the mojo to get it done until his wife said, Richard, you got to go. You got to do this. And then all of a sudden, man, let it rip. And now you see an adult daughter highlighting the principles and teaching them to her children. This is a multi-generational effort, Sheriff.
Yeah, it was. And in fact, Josh taught the preamble to sign language to his choir class, and they performed it at an assembly and a concert. And it was beautiful. We still have that somewhere on tape. We got to find that somehow, Lucy. But I'm so grateful that Don found this heirloom, this archive, the cassette that brought all this together. And like I said, I hadn't seen this tape for about 8 or 9 years since I used it at school.
Incredible historic relics. We're going to package it with some other memorabilia too to help raise money for the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. Become a member of the Posse today, CSPOA.org. For Sheriff Richard Mack, his incredible daughter, Luci Mack, and his lovely wife, Don Mack, God save the Republic of the United States of America.